Hello, everyone. I believe we are live here today in Zoom. I don't really see myself talking, but I believe we're here live. I am here today. I'm very excited to share with you today Nancy Juetten. If you do not know Nancy, I'm really excited to introduce her to you today because she and I have been working together for about a year. Now on podcasting, and she's brilliant at what she does, and she's got some really exciting things to share with us today. So let me formally introduce her. Nancy Juetten guides successful service professionals to book themselves on the right podcasts without hiring an expensive booking agency. Clients welcome more inbound client inquiries, leads, and sales while elevating their own celebrity as a direct result of what she shares. That is true, and I can attest to that, and we'll talk about that as we go on. So Nancy, welcome to the call. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, can you see, I don't know what you can see here. There we go. I think, okay, we're back. We're live. Okay, super. I am so excited to have you here today, Nancy, because I have benefited so much from being in your presence, being in your groups this year. And I am excited to share you with my people too.
Well, that makes me so happy. It's been such a pleasure to see you take every lesson and run to accomplish such magnificent things. And that's really the vision I hold for all of my clients and everyone that I get to work with.
And I've been able to see that part as well, because I've also been in a group where there's just several of us, many of us actually working toward this. And I see how obviously I know how you take care of me, but then I got to see how you take care of other people as well. And it's all the same. So you're just very generous and very knowledgeable. And obviously I know how to book people on podcasts. I do this myself, but what I knew I needed is I needed fresh thinking. I needed somebody who was a couple steps ahead of me, somebody who can help me. And that was definitely you, because you're such a pro, especially at this podcasting thing. So let's just dive in and start talking about all things podcasting, because I know this is your sweet spot. This is what you love.
It is podcast guesting in particular.
Absolutely. Podcast guesting. So let's talk about that. Why is right now a really good time to do podcast guesting? What would you say to that?
Well, the global pandemic has had an awful lot to do with why podcast guesting is such a hot visibility strategy. Right around March of 2020, it seemed like the whole world stopped for very powerful, profound, and gut-wrenching reasons. People were dying left and right. And we're still dealing with that with the Delta variant. People are still reluctant to go to live events. They're reluctant to do a whole variety of things. What do you do if you're a service provider who needs more clients, connections, clients, and cash, if you can't leave your house to go to a networking event? I think what we've discovered over the last year is that Zoom has truly become a great blessing for all of us, because we can be eye to eye and nose to nose and face to face with people who can get to know, like, and trust us without leaving our house. Here we are today, we're live on Zoom. These are people that you've carefully curated, being part of a community that you lead. This wonderful implied endorsement to bring an expert onto your platform is a halo that gets to transfer to the person who you're talking to. But when you consider how many podcasts there are, last week I checked on Listen Notes, there are 2.4 million podcasts. It's like the wild, wild west out there. It's the gold rush. You don't have to speak on all of them, but if you carefully curate your 8 really great shows that would be perfect to amplify your authority, you can touch and transform lives by having a long-form conversation with people who may fall in love with you. And when you get the opportunity to say what next step they can take to move closer in your direction, chances are the right people are going to run in your direction, and you're going to have more new business to tend to. And that is so empowering at a time in our life when there's an awful lot out of our control.
I couldn't agree more. And that is exactly what I have experienced through really deciding at the beginning of the year to use podcast guesting as a way to put myself out there, because we did need something different. Because I used to get a lot of business just by going out to, events and things like that, either in town or traveling and things like that. And that's just not happening. And this is so convenient. We get to do it we get to meet, I mean, we get to meet people we probably would have never met before. And that's also another benefit of this. And that has just been, that's been incredible. I've loved that.
Well, the other thing that I really like about it is that, I mean, listen, I have spoken on a lot of big stages at live events in my career. And has it ever happened that you've thought, oh, I'm going to another live event, I'm going to another pitch fest, right? Oh, here we go. It's time for the pitch fest. And we're going to have the parade of people that are going to do this wonderful thing and make these big asks. And it's going to be very expensive.
Yes, yes, yes.
One of the things that I love about podcast guesting is it's not a selling zone at all. It's an opportunity to have a dialogue and a conversation with someone about something that you may have passion, expertise, or a provocative point of view around. And when you have a longer period of time to actually have a conversation with someone, the host may fall in love with you. The audience may fall in love with you. The people who don't fall in love with you never waste a moment of your valuable time. But the people who do want to know more come to you and inquire at your feet, what do you got? You didn't sell a thing.
Exactly.
And for people who are non-salesy, who are more relationship focused, there's just so much power in that. And then if I had one other thing to say is that sometimes people want to listen to you or get to know you before they ever get on a quote unquote sales call with you. But if people have been binge watching or binge listening or seeing you show up in all these venues, these other people, potential clients of yours, they've already gotten to know you. And if they're still listening, when you get on a call with them, chances are they may be pre-sold because you've been showing up consistently of service in a way that's memorable and remarkable. Who wouldn't want to do business with someone who shows up consistently in those ways?
Exactly. And I love what you say about in service. And that's one of the great things about podcast guesting is that you have to bring value to the conversation. Like you have to have a conversation, and that is about bringing value and having that conversation. And that's one of the great things about podcast guesting, because it's got to be a win for everyone. And that is what I'm all about. It's got to be a win for you, a win for the host, a win for the listeners. And then the ultimate win then, of course, is when your right people show up and they say, I heard you on the podcast. I want to know more. What else do you have?
Well, and the other thing that was been most unexpected, but the most exciting part of it for me, and I'm sure you have had this experience as well, when you show up and deliver whatever it is that you have to say in your own inimitable way that can't be duplicated, there are other people listening. Some of them are potential clients, but some of them are potential hosts.
Yes.
And when you hear someone deliver content in a way that is truly of service, that bridges a gap that needs to be bridged, and talks about it in a way that's memorable, you'll be surprised how many hosts will say, I heard you on the ABC podcast. You did such a great job. Will you be a guest on my show too? And then all of a sudden, instead of picking the low-hanging fruit on these, early stage shows, these big players start reaching to bring you up to their level. And then all of a sudden you're reaching even wider audiences of people that get to hear what you have to say. And that has been, for people who like to pitch themselves, let's raise our hands. Who loves to pitch ourselves? You and I are publicists, right? We've been pitching people all our lives. But when things come to you effortlessly, like who wants some more of that?
Yeah, we all want more of that. And the other thing that I have found too, Nancy, and I know you have found this as well, is when you're on someone's show and they're out there actively doing other things, they will oftentimes ask you for more. They'll say like, could you come in front of my mastermind group and do this? Or could I, there's just always, there's the ripple effect of being on these shows. And that is really unexpected. And that's great opportunity as well, because then you get in front of other people who are paying to learn more, and they could potentially pay you for more. And perhaps even this podcast guest, the podcast host could pay you to come and do something else for them. It's like I've just seen a lot of different, there's ripple effects that go along with podcast guesting.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And one of the things I say often is, let's face it, you get invited to do a show. And if we're women, we're worrying about hair and makeup and lighting because we want to show up well, because it could be a video show.
Yeah.
Spend a lot of time worrying about that. Then you deliver the show. You're hoping to create amazing rapport with your host. And then you manifest that excellent rapport with your host. And then the interview is over and the microphone goes silent. That's when the real magic happens. When
Yes.
the microphone goes silent, that's when the host says, wow, you hit the ball out of the park. I've got 3 other people I'd like to introduce you to, or I want to buy your program. It sounds so amazing. Or you as the guest can say, gee, that was so much fun. I loved every second of it. What do you have coming up? And could I be a resource to you to introduce you to some amazing guests who could continue this conversation? And all of a sudden, it's not a one-night stand, it's a long-term relationship. And just this morning, someone reached out to me and said, I heard you on this podcast. I checked out your website. I think you're the person that I need to work with to accomplish A, B, or C. Can we get on the phone to talk about it? Well, it turned out what they wanted to do was to launch a podcast, not necessarily be a podcast guest.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of saying, I'm not your gal, I said, I understand what you're trying to do. And I was fortunate enough to be a guest on Adam Shabley's podcast, and he runs Podcasting Business School. And if there was anyone I could refer you to, he would be the guy. Now, this is like the 3rd or 4th time that I've introduced a client that came to me to Adam. And I never would have met Adam if not for having been introduced to him by someone else who was prior on his show. And we decided that we become best friends. So I don't teach people how to start their own podcast, but I do know people who can teach you how to do that if that's what you want. And I'm going to pay it forward and make a referral to Adam. Adam's going to be appreciative of that. Adam knows lots of people in podcasting. He's going to remember that I've been sending him quality and qualified leads. I'm sure there's more good karma coming my way in the universe because of this giving and receiving of referrals that goes on between the relationships that form when you take your place at the microphone.
Absolutely. The relationships that can form are, they just don't happen like this when you're out, in person. So there's so much benefit to doing this virtually. And you said something about like when you're on the podcast and you hit the ball out of the park, because I want to talk about that, because there's pitching yourself to the podcast, and then there's nailing the interview, being that great podcast guest. And that is another area that you're really good at helping people to show up and bring the value, and be a really great podcast guest, right? So, because that is you have to get the show, right? And then you've got to do a really good job. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like to be a really good guest, like what does that mean? What do we have to be thinking of to be a really good podcast guest?
Well, I actually think that before we ever get to the microphone, we have to adjust our mindset. And the affirmation that I say to myself every day, and that I invite my clients and those who follow my work to also embrace, is this one. My work is worthy of a much wider audience, and my business is worthy of sales beyond expectations. If you set your mindset in this way, then the way that you prepare for those opportunities is to get ready to go to the show before you've even made a pitch. That means tending to things like, do you have a professional quality microphone? Do you have a nice looking backdrop so that we don't see your dirty dishes? Do you have good audio quality? Because it's the greatest gift you can give to a listener, to make sure that they can hear you correctly without a lot of background noise. The next thing you want to do when you've tended to your physical space is you also want to consider, what do I want to talk about? Who is the ideal audience to benefit from it? And what makes me special, different, and preferred, or provocative, or worth talking to right now, so that the host can't wait to have that conversation? I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they rely on the podcast swap. I've got a show, you've got a show, let's swap. Well, how will that serve you if the audience to message match is a complete mismatch? Sometimes people want to trade on their relationship. Oh, I'm friends with Meredith. I'm sure she'd have me on my show, on her show.
Yeah.
if you're behaving and believing as if the most important person is going to call you tomorrow, you prepare what's, I call it a media one sheet. It's a fairly common term, but what is your 50-word bio in the third person that would be intoxicating for a host to read? A host. What are you going to talk about? And can you put some intrigue into those talking points so that they're hungry to know the answer? And what proof do you have around the claims that you make? You know, are you a best-selling author? Have you spoken up on 100 podcasts in the last 60 days? Do you have, you know, proof around your claims? So if you prepare this media one sheet ahead of time, what I've discovered is, regardless of what it looks like, it's a powerful exercise in clarity, because you're deciding, like in your case, you're all about building authority, building visibility, building a brand. What are the kind of shows that would be right for that? Of the 2.4 million that are on iTunes today, you can exclude 90% of them because you want to focus on where your people are. So those are just a few suggestions.
Amazing. And I really want to point out what you say about the bio, because that is another area, Nancy, where you shine, is you really help people to position themselves in their bio in a way that is important, can reach that podcast host, because there are just specific things that podcast hosts want to know. And there are ways that you can stand out. And I've seen you work your magic with countless people, and everyone just walks away with their chin on the floor, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was this amazing, or I sound, and it's just true. You just have a way of pulling that out of people, and it really helps to position them in a way that it makes them an obvious yes.
Well, thank you for that. You know, I wrote my first edition of the Bye Bye Boring Bio workbook in 2009. I debuted the second edition in 2010. And on this very day in 2020, I debuted the third edition. So I've been making over bios for client attraction, media interviews, and speaking gigs since 2009 officially. And so, you know, like, you don't go out and run a marathon tomorrow because you have to do your reps.
Yeah.
I have been writing and revising and making bios brilliant since 2009. I'm in really good shape to do that. And other people marvel that, how does she pull that out of a hat? It's because I'm in really good shape to do it.
Yes, you are.
But the other part of it, which also addresses a mindset thing that I discover with working with clients all these years, is writing about yourself is like opening up a vein and drawing the blood. You know, nobody really loves it. I mean, I haven't run into a whole lot of people that love writing about themselves.
Yes.
And then there's all kinds of head trash that gets in the way. I've got imposter disease. How could I possibly claim that? What are they going to think of me if I say that? I'm afraid of what they're going to think of me if I do. You know what I mean? There's all this kind
Absolutely.
of stuff that people have. And when I get a chance to talk to someone about, well, tell me about yourself and what are you proud of and what have you accomplished? And sometimes there'll be some rambling that goes on. I'll be listening for cues of what people are lit up about. And I'll be able to say, well, hey, I've got a couple ideas. How about this? And people do marvel, and they walk around with their phones in record mode and say, well, how did you do that? And can I use it? And I say, yeah, that's my gift to you. So I guess one of the things I would say is, I think it was Richard Bach, he said, if you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them. And so if you are one of those people that has, who am I to be this person? Who am I to claim this? I'm afraid of what they're going to think. I mean, you don't have to go, don't argue for your limitations, argue for your upside. That would be number one. And if you are not yet an Amazon bestselling book author or a New York Times bestselling author, and you haven't yet worked with thousands of clients to achieve an 8 or 9 figure income, what do you have that you can bring forth that would ring true and compel people to want to hear the rest of your story? Because everyone has a story. Everyone has something to say. And I think the other thing about it with regard to making it practical for those who want to also make money, is can this message that you share also relate to how it is that you serve your clients so that there can be an outcome that's worthy of celebration in the bank account later?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, so much goodness, Nancy. You have so much to share with people. And we could probably talk for another hour about this. I mean, I know we could, but you do have something special that's coming up next week to help people take this to the next level. So can you tell people what that's about?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
I am leading a live virtual event called the Podcast Visibility Live Lab. And it starts on Monday, September 13th at 11 o'clock. And we're going to meet every day at 11 o'clock live. And what this is all about is guiding you through my 6P system so that you can prepare your message. You can position yourself as a guest that a host can't wait to book. You can prioritize the best places to start to quickly book yourself on the right shows. I'm going to also teach you how to pitch yourself in a way that builds a relationship so that you can ping pong people back into your world so you ultimately can profit. And I'm also going to talk a fair amount about the presence you bring to your interviews and the importance of practice to get along the path to mastery. So each day there's going to be a bite-sized homework, a bite-sized content piece, a bite-sized homework, opportunity to be celebrated for your brilliance. And by the end of the challenge, if you will, you're going to be media ready, media savvy, and on message. And you may have even booked yourself on a couple of shows by taking inspired action based on what it is, the resources that I point you to. And so it's completely free to participate. And replays will be posted every single day so you can catch up on the weekend. But I really would love for everyone in Meredith's group to be part of the Podcast Visibility Live Lab, because it will transform you and it will give you this level of empowerment to rock your fourth quarter by speaking up virtually without leaving your house.
I mean, it's an amazing offer. This is for no cost, right? So this is all for free, all next week. I really want to encourage people to take advantage of this, because I can tell you, you won't regret spending more time with Nancy as she guides you along these paths. And I'm certain that there are people in this free program who will book themselves on podcasts by the end of this. So here's how you take.
And the other thing I want to say is that, I mean, you have been through this yourself.
Yes.
And maybe you would like to say, I mean, what have been your results?
So yes, so I have been able to book myself on, I don't even know how many, I should probably know, countless podcasts. And then again, like the ripple effect of these things, it just kind of goes and it kind of takes on a life of itself. And, you know, you find yourself, you're constantly showing up for this group or that group or the other thing. And then people come in and they either join, like they've joined my Facebook group, or they've joined my newsletter, or they've reached out to me personally. And and so they're in my world. And then what I've been able to do is literally make thousands of dollars from people that I have just been able to meet just this year virtually, never met them in person. So if it can happen for me, it can happen for you. It's happened to lots of other people that I know from Nancy's group. It's just a great way to get out there and really become more visible, become more credible to the people who are looking for you. And then you're able to take them on the journey and then help make the transformation for them that they're looking for from you. So those are kind of like high level, some of my results from doing this work with you, and just really fine tuning all the positioning and all those P's that you just mentioned, the presence, the positioning, the pitching, like all of that just needs to be honed and taken care of. And when you do that, this is all super doable. This is all super doable DIY. This is prime for DIY.
So where do people go to register?
So here's where people go to register. So I'm going to read this link. And am I an affiliate for this? Yes, I am. And here's why. Because I know Nancy. I trust her. I've benefited from her and all of that. So if nothing else, do this free program with Nancy. Okay. So here's the link. It's getknowngetpaid.com/Meredith dash PVLL. Okay. And that's for Podcast Visibility Live Lab. Okay. So I'm going to say it again, getknowngetpaid.com/Meredith dash PVLL. And I'll put it in the link below here in our Facebook group. But I encourage you to go get in on this free training and see where it can take you. That's all. That's just my request. If this is of interest to you, just go do this. Don't second guess it. Just go do it. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much. And, since this is being broadcast live in your Facebook group, if anyone has questions that are coming up as a result of what we've talked about, go ahead and tag me in the group, because I'm a member here too. And if there's this answer that I can provide or any other support that you need, just reach out. I'm as accessible as I appear. I'm just the nicest gal in town. But my greatest success is not how many zeros or commas are in my income, but how many of my clients end up using what it is that I teach and train them to do to achieve their greatest outcomes. And I think that when Meredith says she's made thousands of dollars just doing what it is that she implemented, I'm a mentor, but I'm an implementer, because one of the things that I do, especially in my tuition-based programs, is I say, listen, I'm a frequent flyer as a podcast guest, but when I start this program with you, my spreadsheet is at 0. I have 0 on the calendar, and you do too. And while I'm training you, I'm going to see about booking myself on 2 shows a week or more. And I expect you to do the same. And I'm saying that to you now. Could you book yourself on 2 shows a week consistently, tenaciously, and to reach higher and higher each time you go out to make your requests? Because I promise you, 1 year from now, with 100 podcast guesting spots under your belt on the right shows, your star is going to rise. Your income is going to escalate. Your credibility is going to be uncontroverted, and you will be very happy about your results.
Absolutely. And I can attest to Nancy celebrating success, because just before we started this call, I was telling her about some success, additional success that I was having. Nancy was celebrating with me as before we even got on this call today. So she is right there to be a mentor and all of that. So I did see here, Gail asked on Facebook, she said, is there a way to vet people for your podcast? And she says, wow, thank you. And can you put the link here? Yes, Gail, I will definitely put the link there. So can you vet people for your podcast?
Oh, yes. Yes. And you should. Yes, you should. One suggestion, Gail, is to create a little form where people actually have to apply to be a guest on your show. And they have to indicate, you could ask them, have you listened to at least 3 episodes? What did you learn that was memorable from them? Did you post a 5-star review? Can I see it? What do you want to talk about on my podcast? What will the audience take away? Create a form so that when people apply, it is a privilege that you have to choose who it is that you will invite. Then the other thing you can put on your form is, once, if selected to be a guest on my show, do you agree to showcase that episode in your social media and other ways that you have to bring buzz to our collaboration? You want people that want to say an enthusiastic yes to that, because you don't want one-night stands. You want long-term relationships, and your host, your guest, should care enough about your success to support your success by merchandising that link everywhere they can. Because you as a host, what do you want? You want more downloads, more 5-star reviews, and more listeners. And you as a guest, the ideal podcast guest, doesn't just prepare for the show and stand and deliver, but does his or her part after the show to make sure that collectively the show gets as many ears and eyes as possible. And here's the benefit to everybody. When other hosts see you merchandising the show you were on, they immediately think, that's the kind of guest I want on my show. Because how many people are completely self-centered and only think about themselves? If you can be the opposite, the world is your oyster.
Love it. Love it. And I think we are going to leave it with that, because you guys, I'm sure that you have learned stuff today. You've seen how Nancy she gives. I really want to encourage you, if podcast guesting is something that is on your radar, you want to do it, go sign up for this free training. Getknowngetpaid.com/Meredith PVLL. Just go do it. Don't second guess it. Go do it. You won't be sorry. And thank you so much, Nancy, for being on this call today. Always a joy to talk to you. And thank you everyone for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.